It's been 7 years and I still don't know why they made the decision to have Valentine look like an emo pirate. Hello everybody, it's Katie here. I think it's safe to say that the majority of you discovered my channel through Shadowhunters. My channel was just a tiny little baby still in the womb before Shadowhunters happened, but then I reacted to the casting process, and then when the show was airing I made weekly videos, and that is where the majority of you subscribers probably found me. And I think the reason why that happened is because I was one of the few people on the internet who was a fan of the books and still enjoyed the show. I think it's fair to say I was a lot more positive. Yeah. The reason for that is because going into the show, I knew that I wasn't going to take it seriously. We were so lucky, as Mortal Instruments fans, to get given a second chance at an adaptation. Especially when you look at book series like Percy Jackson. Only just now has that series gotten a chance at a TV adaptation. It took years after the failed movie to get to that point. And then most books with bad adaptations just never get another chance. So to get a TV show just a few years after the film tanked was such an opportunity for us. And I decided from the get-go that I was going to try and be more positive about it, which is an incredible feat, might I add, because I am the world's biggest pessimist. But yeah, I really wanted to have fun with it this time. I'd already seen a terrible adaptation of my favourite books. I'd already been through the casting process. I'd done everything before. This time, I just didn't care. And that worked out perfectly for me because I just enjoyed Shadowhunters. I didn't look at it with the critical goggles on that most people did. I just got on with it. Yeah, there were some terrible moments. Awful CGI, really bad writing at times, episodes I'd rather forget. But honestly, I had an absolute ball with Shadowhunters. So back when City of Bones was released, I wasn't on booktube. I only had my tiny teeny little book blog. I wanted to make videos, but I was far too anxious at that point. So really the only place that I properly discussed my feelings on the Mortal Instruments was Tumblr. Yeah, I was hardcore into the Tumblr side of the Mortal Instruments fandom, and there are still people to this day that follow my Tumblr who remember me from that exact time. So considering Shadowhunters was the thing that built this channel, I thought it'd be a good idea to, 7 years later, discuss my feelings on the City of Bones movie. Another reason why I wanted to discuss the film is because for the years when I was making Shadowhunters videos, I would constantly get people saying to me that they thought the movie was better. Considering the movie tanked and everyone was bitching it out at the time, suddenly everyone came out in defense of the film. And it was much better than Shadowhunters. Now, apparently. So considering I had to hear that all the time, I wanted to rewatch the film after the show. So I picked up my DVD and I gave it a rewatch for the first time in... When was the last time I watched this film? 2014. Yeah. I went to the launch party for City of Heavenly Fire and they showed us City of Bones and it was incredibly awkward. So that was the last time I ever watched the film. I thought I'd see how I felt about it now after witnessing Shadowhunters. And yeah, I just thought I'd have a quick discussion. So I first discovered the Mortal Instruments at the very start of 2011. So I wasn't there from the very start, but it has been in my life for almost a decade. It very, very quickly became my favourite book series. I love that world, I love the characters, so I was ecstatic that we were going to get a movie adaptation. The whole of my 2012 and 2013 revolved around City of Bones. Oh, I had so much hope in my heart. So I vividly remember the casting announcements for the film, and I remember how many people were rumoured to be Jace at that time. You couldn't go on Tumblr without seeing a Mortal Instruments edit that contained Alex Pettyfer. I still don't understand why that man was literally everybody's fancast for any book adaptation ever. He's not that special. But yeah, he was a god in the YA world. So yeah, there were many different potential Jaces that people really wanted, and unlike most of the fandom. I was one of the people that actually did want Jamie Campbell-Bower to play the role of Jace. And I know so many people hated that casting decision, but I was all for it. I remember when people first started questioning whether he was going to be Jace, I absolutely lost my shit because I loved him. I loved him because of Sweeney Todd, not because of Twilight like most people would assume. I managed to completely avoid a Twilight phase, but that's a video for another day. So I saw him in Sweeney Todd, and because I am absolute trash for musicals, I loved that movie and I loved him in it. So when there were very vague rumours of him possibly being Jace, I wanted that. I even tweeted Cassandra Clare about that because I was so desperate to see it. That was my ultimate choice for Jace, and fate was on my side because he got the part. So whilst I was absolutely thrilled, he was immediately hit with this backlash of people who just did not want him. There were so many comments like, oh, he's not pretty enough to play Jace. He doesn't have the body for Jace. He doesn't have the attitude for Jace. He's not a very good actor. He doesn't have golden eyes. Do you know people with golden eyes? So I was immediately very defensive of that casting decision, but I was really happy. And then the rest of the casting happened. The day we found out that Robert Sheehan was playing Simon Lewis, that was a moment, because I also loved Robert Sheehan, like anyone who was a teenager in Britain during the time of Misfits. Then we got Kevin as Alec. There was criticism about his age, and like I didn't really mind. I'd seen Kevin in films before. It's a Boy Girl Thing is still one of my favourite rom-coms, and you can fight me on that. So like I wasn't too concerned that he was older because that always happens. And then we had Jemima as Isabel. Aidan Turner. We had Aidan Turner as Luke Garraway. Aidan Turner! Jonathan Rhys-Meyer as Valentine. I thought he was going to be such a good villain. The cast was incredible. I was living my best life. I thought we were going to get the movie of the decade. And then it was released. So looking back at the trailers and the clips that we got, some of it did look quite awkward. But at the time, I just didn't see any issues. I remember the clip of Magnus's party being released on MTV, and at the time I was just so excited to see Magnus Bane that I didn't pay attention to the fact that the scene looked quite stiff. So in retrospect, I should have been more concerned going into the movie than I was, but honestly I was just excited. And then a few days before the film came out, we got reviews from people who had been to see the film in advance, and it wasn't good at all. So when it comes to professional reviewers, I usually don't listen to their bullshit, because honestly there is nothing a middle-aged man loves more than dragging down something that primarily teenage girls like to view. Critics just love to bitch out YA adaptations, so I wasn't concerned about those type of reviews, but I was concerned about the fans that got to go and see it in advance. There were so many blogs and Twitter accounts back in the day, and I know a lot of them got to go and see the film early. Reading their reviews, I could tell that they were just trying to be polite. They did get their problems across, but they did it in a polite way that unsettled me. But then there were other accounts that just really loved the film and they were praising it so much. So I was like, why am I getting worried? I'm sure I'm gonna love it and people are just being dramatic. So when it came out, I went to go and see it that day with my sister and my best friend who also love the books. I got all roomed up, ready for a big spectacular event. And then I got to the cinema and there weren't that many people there. The screening room was half empty, which didn't add to the atmosphere. But I will say that at the time, I was very, very nice to this film. And I don't know whether I was just trying to kid myself that it was better than it was, or I was just horribly in denial. But looking back at the posts I made on Tumblr for the film, I was very positive, very cheery. Immediately I did have problems with the film, mostly the second half of the film, which I will talk about. But I kind of skimmed over that and just highlighted the parts that I loved. But looking back on them now, the parts that I loved then aren't things that I love now. I should have known back then that this wasn't going to go anywhere as a film series. But yeah, we all still thought we were going to get a second film, and then the film got cancelled. So yeah, 2014 was the last time I watched the film. So this year I've been rewatching a lot of things, and considering all the comments that I used to get about City of Bones, I thought I would rewatch City of Bones. So it was the first time that I'd seen it since Shadowhunters, and it was extremely strange to try and get used to these actors in those roles. And yeah, I took notes in my City of Bones journal that I never used for anything else. The amount of merch I had for this film, poor me. I really thought it was the best thing ever. Wow. So first things first, I am going to start with the positives, because even after all these years, I do still have some positives with regards to this film. One of them being the score. The music in this film is so beautiful that it remains one of my favourite movie scores to this day. They just really looked out with that score, because honestly it added so much to the film. And watching it back now, when I wasn't really interested in the film itself, it was the music that made things better for me. But watching it back this time though, considering they had such beautiful music, I do not understand why in the greenhouse scene when they kiss for the first time, somebody thought it was a good idea to randomly drop Demi Lovato's song for the film. Heart by Heart is a good song. I love Demi Lovato, but that song did not need to be in that scene. When you go through the whole film having this pretty music, you get to this important point where your two main characters are going to kiss for the first time and somebody hits play on Demi Lovato. No! We should have kept to one of the pretty songs from the score. It would have made everything so much better. But yeah, overall, the music decisions for this film are still absolutely god tier. And it's one of the very few reasons why I'm sad that the film series didn't continue. Because yeah, the music was just on another level. And even when the scenes were terrible, which a lot of them were, the music just made it so much better. Like Valentine's first appearance through the weird portal that was in the Institute for absolutely no reason other than for Valentine to walk through it. It looked ridiculous because he's got his shirt open. Yes, I'm never going to let that go. But the music at that moment, shivers, honestly. So other things that aged really well for me in this film is the banter between Jason and Simon. I don't know whether that's because of the script or because Jamie and Robert were just brilliant in those moments, but the one-liners that flew between the two of them, they still make me laugh all these years later. So I do think that tension between the two of them worked really well. I still love the way the film looks. Obviously it had a much bigger budget than Shadowhunters ever did because it was a film, so overall it just looked a lot cleaner. The demons were great, the CGI, the effects, everything looked brilliant, and also the Institute was really gorgeous. Obviously in Shadowhunters we have a more modern Institute with a lot more technology incorporated into it, whereas in the film we have the classic Institute with the old church look. And honestly, I love both versions. I like what Shadowhunters did with the Institute, but the look of the Institute in City of Bones is just, yeah, it was very like what you'd expect from reading the book. I also have to say that I think movie Jocelyn was on another level. She owned the shit out of that movie and she was only in it for a few minutes. She was just really badass, and it makes me angry that we didn't get to see more of her. Back in 2013, I would have said that Aidan Turner as Luke was like the best thing to ever happen in any film ever, but now, after having Isaiah playing Luke, as much as I love Aidan Turner, was he a good choice for Luke? I don't know. But on the subject of good choices, Robert Sheehan was a perfect Simon Lewis. I have absolutely no complaints about him whatsoever. He was the one aspect of this film that I thoroughly enjoyed watching it back in 2020. He really worked well as Simon. He had that perfect comic timing that was needed. He had a lot of great one-liners. And although I did love Simon originally when City of Bones was released, I feel like I appreciated his character a lot more this time. In terms of positives, can I think of any more? What did I enjoy this time? I don't know. That might be it. Yeah. A lot of the scenes that I really loved back in 2013, I didn't really like as much this time around. One of them being the fight with the vampires. In 2013, I absolutely loved that scene and I thought it was brilliant, whereas now, I don't know, it just didn't cut it for me. I don't like the way they portrayed the vampires. They kind of looked more like monsters than actual people, which they still are. So let me get into why I just don't think this film was very good, and why honestly I am glad that we didn't continue with a film series. The first major thing being, for me, is that the characters just did not feel connected whatsoever. There was no bond, there was no warmth, and I don't know whether I picked up on this back in 2013 or whether just watching it back now made me realise there's just nothing there. One of my main problems was Alec and Izzy. They just did not feel like siblings to me at all. And I'm sure that's not the fault of Kevin and Jemima. It's probably more to do with the script, but they just were not Alec and Izzy for me. Especially when it comes to Izzy, she just seemed so angry in this film. And like, Izzy to me always has this fun and playful side. That's something about her character that I love. But in this film, she just had a chip on her shoulder. She's just moody. I didn't feel Izziness radiating from her. And then when we get to Alec, I know that he was a whiny little brat in those first 3 books. Believe me, I wanted to slap him myself at so many points, but for Christ's sake, in the film, he's just not likeable whatsoever. He's just background. He wasn't the character that I fell in love with at all. And considering Alec and Izzy are one of the main focus points of the Mortal Instruments for me, the way they were in this film, just no. Another major issue I had was the relationship between Jace and Alec. Because number one, they didn't even bother trying to explain the Parabatai bond in the film. Yeah, it's not like it's a major part of the story or anything, but number two, it just didn't seem like they were friends at all. Like, the film makes it clear that Alec is in love with Jace, and that's why he doesn't like Clary. He doesn't want this random girl coming for his man. But they give us no example as to why Alec is in love with Jace. He just is. There's no friendship. Jace had more funny banter with Simon than he did with Alec. The same could be said for Jace and Izzy as well. They didn't really have that much of a bond, but I think, you know, showing Jace and Alec's bond is a pretty important part of the story, and you just need to get that across, and they didn't at all. You're expected to just know that these are 2 men who would die for each other. They don't actually show you. Which leads me perfectly onto my next problem with the film, is the fact that it just assumes that you have read the books. It does absolutely nothing in the way of introducing new fans to this world. There were so many moments that they needed to expand on, which they didn't. I can't imagine what it must have been like for somebody who'd never read the book to go and see that film. They mention the clave, they just don't expand on it. I don't even know if they mention the Accords, I can't remember. Pretty sure they didn't. They just don't go into detail. They don't really focus on Valentine's hatred for Downworlders. In fact, they don't really discuss Downworlders that much at all. They don't really go into the history of the runes. They just have Simon give Clary an info dump when she wakes up in the hospital. Like, oh yes, there's runes for everything, magical tattoos, woo! And then the second half of the film is batshit crazy, but I'll talk more about that later. I got confused with this film, and I am somebody who has read the books. Yes, these film adaptations are for fans of the books. These movie makers know that these books have a huge fan base, but you still need to try and increase that. Like, surely that is the point. You've got to get casual moviegoers as well. With Shadowhunters, I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who had never read the books before but loved the show. And I know this because people have commented on my videos before. People have messaged me on Tumblr to say that they discovered the show. They'd never read the books before at all, and that had made them go and read the books. And that is what you want. Surely you want people to fall in love with this thing and then go back and read the books as well. So I know that Shadowhunters brought in new fans. Yes, it created wars between book and show fans, and there was a whole mess and drama every week, but they explained the story clearly. The film didn't do that at all. If you hadn't read the books, You must have been completely lost in that cinema. Again, talking about lack of bonds between characters, we really didn't get any backstory between Valentine and Luke either. It just felt like everything moved so quickly. And I know the part of the reason for that is because it's a film. You don't have as much time, which is where Shadowhunters had an advantage because they had all these episodes to play with. But I just feel like there were things that they left out that they really shouldn't have, and the film really suffered because of that. My main issue with the film back in 2013 was always the second half of the film, and that's still a problem I have with it now. It's just that now I can laugh at it because it's just stupid. Whereas back then, sitting there in the cinema watching it for the first time, I was like, what are they doing? Why are demons invading the Institute? Why is Valentine walking in through a portal? Why? Why is all of this happening so quickly? Why is Jocelyn floating in the fucking basement of the Institute? Why? Why did any of the second half of this film happen? The hopes that I had in my heart for Jonathan playing Valentine, through the roof. I thought he was going to be incredible, and he just wasn't. Again, I don't know whether that's the way he played the character or the script's fault. I don't know. I just know I absolutely hated him. He wasn't Valentine at all. Valentine's supposed to be this charismatic man that can charm people into believing what he believes. This man was an edgy pirate goth with plaits in his hair and his shirt open. And again, he was really just angry, whiny, and actually not really very scary. And he just wanders in through this portal and fucks shit up. I absolutely hate that portal. The scene where Jace takes a bubble of the portal, puts his hand through it and starts playing with Clary's hair is still one of the creepiest scenes in a film ever. I hate it. I hated it then, I hate it now. Why did it exist? There was no need. Let me tell you now, the portals looked absolutely shit in the first series of Shadowhunters, but at least Jace didn't stick his hand through it in the name of romance. But anyway, back to Valentine. From the moment he came through the portal, the film just sank for me. I don't want to go through that whole conclusion because I'm tired, my throat hurts. I'm assuming that you've seen the film too. I don't like anything from that moment on. The only thing that I was pleased about was the fact that the audience knows that Clary and Jace are not related. They know that it's just a trick. And at the time I remember fans being mad about that because they wanted these non-book fans to think that it was genuinely incest, and I'm like, why did you want people to think that? Because honestly it's just uncomfortable. Because I did come to the books later than everyone else, I knew that Clary and Jace weren't related. If I hadn't have known that, would I have wanted to continue reading? Probably not. So I was actually happy that they told the audience from the get-go that it was just a trick. Hodge got his betrayal and his redemption arc all within the space of like half an hour. Good for him! And like, by the end of this film, you still think that Valentine is the villain, like you know that he's gonna come back and cause trouble, but you don't know about any of the bigger problems at hand. The Clave is just as bad as Valentine sometimes. Like, it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't build on the overall story, and watching it back this time left me wondering what the hell was their plan long term? Where were they going to take the rest of the series? What were they going to do? Because they fucked it up so much. How are they gonna fix that? Other things that have changed about my opinion is that back in 2013 I really loved Magnus's very brief scenes, whereas now they really did Magnus dirty. And it's absolutely not the fault of Godfrey at all, because I think he was a wonderful Magnus. Like, he was an actor whose work I continued to follow after the film, so the news of him passing away was brutal to me, because he really brought my favourite character to life for the first time, and I am always going to be grateful for that. But the film did not do him justice. Looking back on it now, I feel like his scenes were really awkward. The party just didn't feel like Magnus's party at all. It wasn't as fun as it should have been. Magnus felt more serious, and the stupidest thing that they did was to dub his voice. I still don't know why they did that. Maybe because Godfrey had an accent, but in looking back, why would they cast him if that was an issue? Because surely they would have known about that at the start. I don't know why they dubbed him. Again, what was their plan for that long term? It just, yeah, I just really feel like they lost Magnus's potential in this movie, especially considering he was a fan favourite. So yeah, in looking back, I am really sad about the direction they took with Magnus. I mean, I did watch the film back with the intention of taking notes to speak about the things that I've realised over the years I didn't enjoy about the film. But in terms of not taking it seriously, it's still a fun film to watch back. There were some jokes that I still found funny. There were some scenes that I still think are iconic. But I really did struggle to find things that I enjoy about the film this time around. And it's sad because that film meant everything to me at one point, but in terms of what I think is a better adaptation, I am going to say Shadowhunters, and I know so many people will disagree with me, and that's fine. We're allowed to have different opinions. We respect each other, don't we? Watching Shadowhunters has made me realise that maybe they should have turned it into a show from the very start. You just have more time to go into all this history. It's such an intricate world that you need to explain to people all these little things that are wrong about the clave and just all of those details. They needed to be included. The show had more time for that. It had more time to show the connection between these characters, give you more of a feel for what they're like, show off their personalities a lot better, because honestly the film just didn't do that at all. But I am still grateful for the film. It gave me so many happy memories. But yeah, I really do think that people judge Shadowhunters too harshly, and to say that the film is better. They both did things good and bad in their own different ways. I don't even think they're comparable really. So maybe we should stop arguing over which is better. So please do let me know whether you watched City of Bones back in 2013, how you felt about it then, how you feel about it now. I know there are some people that absolutely hated it when it was released, but now look at it fondly, and that's great. I wish I was one of those people. Please do share with me all of your thoughts and feelings. Also, what failed book adaptations would you like to see get another shot? Because I know that there are so many. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you are staying safe. Bye!